Yeah, I was saying that I think Jalen Hyatt. If you, I think his profile is actually very similar to not Cedric Tillman, excuse me, Velus Jones Jr. of last year. I think
Great.
the only reason Hyatt put up way bigger numbers than Jones was because Tillman was hurt when Hyatt was playing. I think if Cedric Tillman played the whole season fully healthy, Jalen Hyatt's numbers would have mirrored what Velus Jones did last year. Velus Jones is an NFL player. He's with the Bears. Had a bit of a rocky rookie season, but you see some promise there. Velus Jones was not a first round draft pick. And so I think to me personally, if I'm Josh Heupel, I'm excited about the prospect of now getting to work more with Squirrel White, who I think actually may long term have does have unique talent and potential as a receiver, as a slot guy.
Great point. They get longer to work with him as well, which should be interesting. All right, so the rest of the guys, I don't blame Jalen Hyatt for playing. There's always going to be a part of me, maybe because I'm getting up there in age that's nostalgic and says, well, he should play. Tennessee's fan base did a lot for him, but I understand it's a business. Be sure and hit that like button, not the like my internet connection button, but the like the show button, the thumbs up. We greatly appreciate that to become a part of your morning, and we open it up to more listeners. Let's get your comments back up on the message board as I lost that in my little internet connection blip. So, I mean, I think he should play. I understand the reason not to play. I have no problem with Cedric Tillman not playing. I think he tried to rush back for the Alabama game as best he could. That didn't work out, and I don't think he was really ever effective. So it's time to get ready for the NFL draft. Those high ankle sprains can be a bear, not just for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, but the rest of your career. So I don't have a problem with him laying out whatsoever. Your thoughts?
Sorry, I have no problem with Cedric Tillman laying out. I think that you're right. He's been dealing with an ankle injury. He hasn't been able to be as effective as he wants to be. And honestly, again, I think Cedric Tillman is, like we talked about, a little more uniquely valuable than Jalen Hyatt. But if he's not coming back, more reps for Brew McCoy and Ramel Keaton. And it's time to work with both of them. And I'm really, really happy for specifically Ramel Keaton. Don't we all know Brew McCoy's potential, but I think it's underrated how many times Ramel Keaton has come through in key moments for Tennessee this past year as a wideout. And, I think that him deciding to stay at Tennessee, even after losing the starting wideout job to Cedric Tillman a couple of years ago, speaks highly of him. I think Ramel Keaton is kind of a lesson in just kind of sticking it out a lot of times with systems. And so I think that this is actually really good for the coaches to get the reps. I mean, if we don't know if Joe Milton's going to be your guy, I know you think Nico's going to be starting by game 3 of next year, but I will say if he is your guy, there's still the chance he's in the race. He's got a whole extra month to work with Brew and Ramel since both of them are going to be back next year.
I like Ramel Keaton a lot. I think he is what he is. I think he's a good B plus player type of guy. I don't think he's ever going to be a superstar. Is that pretty much common ground? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, I think the lesson is if you're a B plus player though, who's not going to be a superstar, and you're not happy about getting your playing time or reps early, don't risk losing your scholarship by entering the transfer portal trying to go somewhere to play immediately. I think that's kind of a mistake that a lot of players are making in the transfer portal right now.
No, I agree completely, and I've heard it both ways. Talking to some of these coaches that I talk to, how some players will show up at a campus like Tennessee and see, you've got filet, you've got fish, you've got pasta, you got everything you want, and you got whirlpools, and you got facilities, and you got all this stuff. You don't have to wait in line to ever do a bench press in your life. And I've heard guys go the other way that have transferred to name programs that don't have what the upper echelon, let's say the top 15 or 20 programs have, like Tennessee. And they're kind of like, whoa, that might have been a mistake to change. Joe says he agrees with you about Jalen Hyatt. Joe also says, I'm not sure what you mean. Eli's could have done what Hyatt did in the same situation personally. Here are my thoughts on Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman. I look at Cedric Tillman, and I think that's a guy that I would draft. Now, do I have questions about his ankle? Sure. Do I have questions about A little bit old-fashioned questions about not wanting to play in the bowl game. Sure, that's just me because I'm old. But as a whole, I look at him and I see a more complete receiver than Jalen Hyatt. With Hyatt, I see a fast guy and I see an offense that figured out how to read the safety. In particular, Hendon Hooker figured out how to read the safety, and that was a natural from the slot position. That position opened itself up a lot, every bit as much as Jalen Hyatt did. I don't mean that as a knock on Jalen Hyatt, Caleb, but I kind of see that as he was a great player in a great situation. I think Cedric Tillman is a great talent as a whole at wide receiver. You might disagree a bit on that.
No, I fully agree with you on that. And I think Cedric Tillman, it's funny when you were off, Amanda and I were talking about this, but we were talking about, I know you brought in the opting out, but if you want to bring in intangibles too, when you're comparing them, Cedric Tillman, here's a 2-star receiver in 2018 who worked his way into the number 1 wideout spot. Stayed with Tennessee, flying under the radar for 2.5 years. The coaching change happens. All signs pointed to him never, ever playing, and he decided to stay and give it a shot with Heupel and became the number 1 receiver. Jalen Hyatt has openly admitted that he wasn't that focused in 2021. And look, I'm not trying to criticize him. He clearly righted the ship this year, but when you talk intangibles, there is a red flag a lot of times when a player is capable of turning it off like that, because some of the best that I think of never really turned it off. They were always driven and dedicated. And so, okay, I'm dedicated this year, but I'm not going to be dedicated next year. That's a bit of a red flag for
like a contract year in the NFL, perhaps.
Exactly. What if it's and I mean, I just think that it reminds me, I think I've told you this before. Remember when Tyler Bray, after the 2011 season and Tennessee went 5-7, and he admitted, I was kind of dumb last year. I didn't really focus or do anything hard, focus that hard. And I'm like, yeah, 2012, actually, he played well. The defense was bad, but nobody in the NFL drafted him at that point. Even though he had by far the best measurables of any quarterback in that draft, no one came close to wanting him because his intangibles were so bad.
Isn't that incredibly hard to fathom that you would work that hard to get to that point, and then you only have a finite number of years to play as a football player, be it 3 or 4 in college and probably on average 3 or 4 in the NFL, and you say this is a year I'm going to take off? That doesn't make much sense. Zool Beer Company makes a lot of sense. Worldwide award-winning craft beer, and it's in downtown Knoxville. They have parking, and you can go to xulbeer.com, zoolbeer.com. It is fantastic, the official craft beer of Off the Hook Sports. So some other guys that are opting out. I actually, listening to some other people and talking to some people, I think Jeremy Banks has more of an effect than a lot of people might think, just because I think they're thin there. I think they're thin on the second level of that defense. I think that you need all the legs you can get with the way they run plays on offense. And I think he was very good. I don't know if the defense quit or not at South Carolina, but I think he was very good at understanding defensive fronts. And I think that's a more significant loss than I hear from other people. You?
1,000% agree. I think on the long term, many Tennessee fans will say good riddance to Jeremy Banks because of how the season ended. But and Josh Heupel did a good job this offseason, through recruiting and getting BYU transfer Keenan Peely in the transfer portal, to make sure he can kind of offset the impending loss of Jeremy Banks next year. That's irrelevant for the Orange Bowl, though. I mean, that doesn't really matter. So I think that Jeremy Banks is huge. I think the only way Tennessee's defense can offset the loss of a guy like Jeremy Banks, and you talked about this against South Carolina, is if the defensive line has one of those, as you said, hair on fire moments where they are just playing with relentless, playing relentlessly. And they didn't do that against South Carolina. It was one of those weird days where it's like, night game, probably, defensive line is, we talk about winning it more. That's a position where you have to really want it all the time to play well, because it's really just winning matchups up front. And so if the defensive line wants to, and by the way, I don't know if you noticed yesterday, Josh Heupel trotted out all the defensive linemen to speak with the media. And
I did notice that.
yeah. And so I think that I think that's really the big deal is they got to play. I mean, Byron Young and Tyler Barron have to go all out. How all out is Byron Young going to go? I know he's chosen to play, but he's going to the NFL draft. Does he really want to risk injury? But maybe at the same time, look, Byron Young may want to improve his draft stock. And if you're playing a bowl game to improve your draft stock as a defensive end, football, luckily for football's the ultimate team sport, but defensive end is a position where you can really just focus on help on yourself and you're not really kind of leaving anybody out to dry, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I just think you got to be careful in that situation. I don't believe you can play football protecting yourself. I think that's a great way to get hurt. So I would be very careful with that. And yeah, I don't have any reason to believe that's his mindset going in. But if that were the case, I'd be incredibly careful with that. So what opt outs are we missing on Tennessee side? I think we've got pretty much got them all
I think
covered.
those were the only three:
Yeah,
Hyatt, Tillman, and Banks.
and then the Byron Young is going to play, so an opt
Same with
in.
Darnell Wright.
Yeah, Darnell Wright will play. I think that's a big deal. I think that Darnell Wright is. I was looking at and listen. Everybody puts these lists out, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you that some of them are just absolutely insane. Danny says, "Wish Banks best of luck." I think that's kind of a way of saying go ahead and go. But I will go ahead and tell you a lot of these lists that you're seeing come out with Tennessee prospects rated in the NFL draft are just people saying fun stuff. They're picking the Bolitnikoff Award. They're picking the guy who caught 5,000 yards, and that's good. And I think we talked about how Cedric Tillman is the probably a better prospect at receiver between the two. But I look at these group of guys. I'm going to start with you, Caleb. Who's the safest, best pick out of these Tennessee Vols if you're an NFL team and you're floating there and that guy's there? Who do you like the most out of this group of Vols that are going on to the NFL this year?
That's the easiest question you ever asked me, Darnell Wright.
I agree
I'm
too.
not even I'm not even thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got a natural right tackle that can flip the left tackle when he needs to. If you ever have an injury at that position, I think he could slide into guard. Although I don't think he would ever be asked to do that unless it was an emergency situation. Yeah, I think that's super easy. Who's second on your list?
If we were to go second, I would have said Byron Young at the start of the year, but I don't know. Byron Young kind of was a bit of a letdown this year as an edge rusher, and I don't want to pile on him too hard, but you just didn't see the emergence with him. If I were going to go second, I think an underrated one, and he doesn't, the PFF grades and analytics wouldn't like this, but I think an underrated one is Trayvon Flowers. And I think I might go with him. And the reason I say that is, yes, the secondary was awful this year. I think we forget how much Trayvon was covering for so many deficiencies across the back end. And it reminds me of you ever see you see this in the past sometimes. You see sometimes safeties don't have the type of year they wanted to have because they're so often trying to cover for so many deficiencies at cornerback.
Reminds me,
And
reminds me of Rashad Baker.
yes, his senior year, he didn't get any interceptions until the end because he was trying to cover for so many issues
Yeah,
at corner.
yeah, yeah, he started out at receiver, and I remember Philip Fulmer saying he might be the most natural receiver that he'd ever seen. And then 2 days later, he moved to corner, and then the next year he moved to safety, and he was kind of in charge of covering up the back end of that defense. I don't even think he played corner the whole year his freshman year. I remember the LSU tackle that he wasn't able to make that was against LeBron and Tofield. But Baker to me is similar. He had a long NFL career, eight,
Did
10
he?
years.
No, are you sure you're not thinking of Jabril Wilson?
No, Rashad Baker played longer than you would think. I would bet.
Really?
I'll let you look that up while I tell people about the importance of
Oh,
Viles.
you're right. He did play in the NFL for 8 years. Good
Yeah,
call.
he floated around. He started with the Bills. Viles Automotive Group is car shopping made easy. Viles Automotive Group is right there. They want, they need, and they appreciate your business. And if you want to talk auto financing, they can do that. And with the service department, you're going to get exactly what you need at Biles Automotive Group. So I ask you guys, okay, this is kind of where I wanted to get to. Green Wave said, why not Hendon? I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think Hendon is going to be an elite NFL prospect. I think Hendon is incredibly smart, and I think he'll hang around kind of like a Josh Dobbs for a long time. But when I think of Hendon Hooker, I think of a guy who was the perfect quarterback in the perfect system. I think that there are going to be some limitations with his ability to complete balls over the middle consistently. I don't like his accuracy over the middle, and he's going to be asked to do that in the NFL. I've heard some talk that Hendon Hooker could be a first-round pick. Heard other people that I trust a lot more say third-round pick. I think he's a third or fourth-round pick. I think quarterback boosts you a little bit. So that's probably worth a round right there. Otherwise, I'd be talking about fourth or fifth round. I'm not knocking Hendon Hooker in any shape, form, or fashion, Caleb. I just don't view him as an NFL franchise quarterback. I don't see him as that.
So Hendon at this stage, the way he is right now, I'm with you. I don't see him as an NFL franchise quarterback. I do believe there's things quarterbacks can get better at. I don't think Hendon is a guy that can start right away, no matter what team drafts him. You're going to need like probably 2 or 3 years. But and I would have been with you.
And you're going to have the ACL, which
Yeah, and you're going to have the ACL issue. The way coaches have incorporated analytics and the right schemes into their systems now, I think you can find a spot for Hooker. Look, if you can find a spot for Lamar Jackson, who is not accurate on deep balls or over the middle and won an MVP, I think you can find a spot for Hendon Hooker. He's got to be in the right situation and he's got to develop. I don't think he's going to be able to start his first or second year in the league. I do think, and yeah, I'm seeing a Tyrod Taylor, Jacoby Brissett, things like that.
The Tyrod Taylor comparison from Joe, by the way.
I do too. And then, I mean, look, I this is an intangible factor on top of that. There's the skills of Hendon Hooker and Tyrod Taylor, and and a Jacoby Brissett, and even Lamar Jackson, if you want to say that. I don't really see as much Lamar. He's not as fast as Lamar. But then there's the intangibles. I mean, let's be honest. If there's anybody you believe could really develop the skills he needs to at the next level, I mean, Hendon Hooker is that guy, because you just said it. He's really smart. He's got an incredible work ethic, and he's really mentally tough.
Okay, so Hendon Hooker starts 19 and a half games. Now, let me say 24 and a half games in his NFL career, over under.
I believe in his intangibles. I'm going to go over. I'm going to go over.
I'm going to be the bad guy. I would go under. Well, at least we disagree on something for once this morning. I'll tell you what you need to do is go to giaplantoday.com, giaplantoday.com. Video conferencing is allowed. You to be able to get the best financial advisor services, and that's Guardian Investment Advisors, giaplantoday.com. It's absolutely phenomenal.